Good morning, everyone. Jim Laird joining you live from Diriamo, Nicaragua. Thank you for being here today. Let us go to Instagram and get Instagram going live. So we got Instagram going. Excellent. It's hard to believe this will be my second Christmas in Nicaragua. I've been here on the 15th. I've been here a year. So I will probably do a year in review and just kind of give the pros and cons of being here and what I've learned in the last year. This is a really interesting topic. What's the ideal body fat percentage? Find your healthy range live. So we're live, and we're going to give you some insight on this. And as with anything, there's very few just strictly black and white. There's a lot of nuance to this, and there's a lot of it depends, and there's a lot of trade-offs. A lot of it's just trade-offs. So that being said, I think because, at least this is my perception of how it works, because of the obesity epidemic, we've got two extremes. We've got people that are on the obesity stuff has gotten so out of hand in the United States that the fitness industry has kind of countered and went the opposite way. And the message from the fitness industry is like, if you don't have six-pack abs and you're shredded, then you're not healthy. That's the impression I get from looking at all these influencers and what's promoted as like a healthy, ideal body type or body composition anyways. So nothing ever works. I wish it would be somewhere in the middle. That's where most answers are, but it usually goes from one extreme to the other. And then, of course, the people that are in the like fat shaming, like body acceptance people, always be like, they're like, oh, striated glutes, that can't be healthy. And sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not. There are people that walk around ripped all the time, right? I played football with a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys are from Florida. They're from places that didn't have a lot of money. Mississippi, shredded to the bone, look like a bodybuilder. Not as big as a bodybuilder, but look like a bodybuilder. A lot of wide receiver type, running back types. And these guys, they didn't have the money for performance enhancing drugs. That's just the way they are. And they run lean and they do really well there. A lot of people don't. And it's not necessarily being extremely lean that's hard. It's the process that you have to go through, the calorie restriction, the training, and then what you have to do as far as like your food intake and stuff in order to stay there if you're not naturally a lean person. Like for me to get down to 5%, that would be a lot of work. Like I float, between 12 and 15, and I feel, I have visible abs and I feel good. So that's where I'm comfortable. And a lot of it comes down to blood work, So if you want to get super lean, you need to do your labs. You need to see where you're at. People forget that body fat is an emergency survival mechanism. It's energy reserves, essentially. So if there was like a big disaster in the United States and there wasn't food available and it was like zombie apocalypse, the ultra lean people would not do well. They would be the first ones to go. They might be more capable of going out and finding things, but the people that are obese actually or have extra body fat would actually fare much better as long as they got the water they needed. They would be able to live a long time off their fat reserves. And that's essentially what it's for, essentially. Dom, be nice. So for men, the essential fat range is 2 and 5%. When you start getting down there, that's where most people don't feel real well. That's like your elite bodybuilders. Athletes generally for men run between 6 and 13%. Your fitness people that are fit are generally between 14 and 17. I kind of run between 13 and 15. That's kind of where I run. And power athletes, like strength athletes, like power lifters or offensive linemen, they do better with a little more body fat on them. It provides a little more leverage, provides a little more protection. And the generally accepted rate, like I would say this is the high end. I mean, this is like the average person. Generally 18 to 24 is considered acceptable. And anyone over 25% for a man is considered obese. And so, I think that's a little high, but that's totally fine. Women, it's a totally different story. women are just designed to carry more body fat around. They just are. Like, that's just reality. You know, hang me upside down, burn me. Women are just designed to have a little more body fat, rightly so. I mean, gladly so for me. So that's basically that. And the ranges on women, generally speaking, 10 to 13%. You start getting down below 10%, even I'd say 15 from my experience. Once you start getting below 15% as a woman, you start missing periods, you start not feeling great. And some, I've seen women that run really lean naturally, but it's few and far between. Essential. So 10 to 13 is generally like the bottom end. And, you know, if you want to do figure competition, if you want to do something like that, you know, get there, stay there for a short period of time and get out of that range. You need to be have your body fat a little bit higher. Staying ultra lean as a woman for long periods of time is just not going to end well for most. And once again, your labs and your hormones will determine if it's right for you or not. Athletes, 14 to 20% for women. Fitness, 21 to 24. Acceptable, 25 to 31. Obesity, over 32%. And I would agree with that. Anything over 30% as a woman is you're getting in a danger zone. Most women I've seen do their best between 15 and 23%. That's basically what I see. So there are some pros to having extra body fat. Obviously, if there's a famine, if there's some sort of emergency and you have to skip meals, you're going to do much better if you've got a little extra body fat than if you don't. The cons of obesity obviously are increased risk of chronic disease such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, potential reduction in metabolic efficiency, may lead to higher inflammation, basically just causes chaos, hormone dysregulation, joint strain, movement limitations, reduced mobility, common with excessive weight, interaction with, and you combine that with like modern life stress, it just turns into a cascade of shenanigans. And the body fat too low, too lean. There's pros to this. Obviously, you know, a lot of people, when they get really lean, it improves their insulin sensitivity. You know, certain athletes like sprinters, bodybuilders, obviously they want to have a competitive advantage. The leaner they are, the more muscular they are. The sprinters, the less weight they're carrying around. But even sprinters, they get a point where they get too lean, they lose their ability to produce power. Reduce risk of obesity and a metabolic syndrome and all those things go down. But also, we start getting low, you basically, essential body functions start becoming impaired. The body starts going into more of a survival state. So you start down-regulating testosterone, down-regulating thyroid, immune function. Like, that's why women, their periods shut down when they get ultra lean. They don't produce hormones. That's why most people, like you see on Instagram, that are ultra lean, especially year-round, they're on some sort of hormone replacement. They're on thyroid. And so if you have to use performance-enhancing drugs, stimulants in order to get that lean, you know, what are the consequences of that? That of course depends on the dose. So if you are somebody that wants to be lean, I would suggest getting your blood work. And then the social ramifications of this, like when you go out to eat, you're not going to be able to eat what everyone else is eating. So it's going to be really awkward. Like, we're all going out for pizza and it's like, you know, I'll have a chicken breast and also the diets that are promoted for fat loss are usually, like in the bodybuilding world, a lot of this trickles to the fitness world. It's like, I'm just going to eat chicken and broccoli, and a little bit of rice. And that's totally fine. If you're, and you know, a lot of people will go on an ultra low fat diet. And they just don't do well because they're not getting enough fat, you know, so their hormones suffer even more. And that's fine for a bodybuilder who's using testosterone, because you've got the hormones propped up and you don't need the extra fat in your diet. But even in that, you know, if you're ultra lean, you're not going to get as good a pump in the gym. Your joints, you're probably going to suffer because you're not holding as much water. You don't have extra leverage, so to speak. So those are the cons. And so if you are wanting to be ultra lean, I would suggest you go by your blood work, your inflammatory markers, your testosterone levels. It's just like anything else. There's also the other extreme, getting too muscular. Also these ranges tend to, as you age, you lose muscle mass, and so naturally you're going to have more body fat, and that's one of the reasons you want to keep strength training as you age, to basically keep that muscle, which provides a lot of metabolic flexibility for you. Obviously, if longevity is your main goal, you don't want to be like super physiological as far as muscle mass. You don't want to be a bodybuilder type, or people with tons of muscle mass don't tend to live as long. But a normal person that's doing full body workouts, and most people don't understand the amount of work and the amount of eating that goes into gaining large amounts of muscle. And there are people like me that just carry lots of muscle regardless. I carry a lot of muscle in my legs, my whole family's built like that. It's just kind of part of who I am. My grandfather lived till he was almost 90, looked out the window, there's a bird, heart stopped, didn't have a heart attack, just dropped to the floor. Heart just decided it was done. And so I've got some really good longevity. I've obviously taken some years off my life, and then the quality of life kind of goes into that. Do you want to be 85 years old and be, a little person that can't do a lot of things physically? A lot of people today are losing muscle. The reason people are encouraged to go to the gym is because we just don't do things outside anymore. I mean, obviously the people here in Nicaragua, the older people I've seen, they're obviously not walking around looking like a bodybuilder, but at the same time, they're very capable. They're out doing manual labor every day with a machete. They're working with their livestock. They're riding horses. They're riding motorcycles. They're very active. So they've kept a lot of their muscle mass. So that's basically what it comes down to. Like, if you want to push getting lean, there's oh, absolutely, Jim. That's a great question. How much is geographic and ancestry part? Yeah, and Jim, the Eskimos are going to have a higher percentage of body fat, just so they don't freeze to death. So that plays a huge role in it as well. A lot of that, especially for you, since I've seen you in person, a lot of that fat that seems like fat in the gut, a lot of that is stress related for men, and then a lot of it for you is that pooch belly deal, where you need to do like your child's pose and push some of those guts up, because all your guts are going down. But that's a part of it for you. But stress plays a role in that. And as you get older, at your age, Jim, having a little extra body fat is probably not a bad thing. You're a pretty lean guy to begin with, so the effort to get rid of that is probably going to be not worth the price of admission on that. So thank you for that. But yeah, people in Africa tend to run a lot leaner because it's hot, and obviously they don't need to worry about freezing to death. Whereas people from northern latitudes generally carry a little more body fat because it's protective. It keeps you from freezing to death. And then extra calories, in the tropics, and that there's always calories available. Generally speaking, in the Arctic, there's calories available, but you got to work for them a lot harder. And that's why they eat so much fat there, because it has the most energy per calorie, whale blubber and all that good stuff. So I had a couple questions, but Jim, thank you so much for that. I had a couple questions that were mailed in to me. Let me find it here. What is the easiest way to determine body fat at home without any equipment? Not to be cruel or mean, the mirror. That's at home without equipment is the mirror, or jump up and down in front of the mirror. That generally will tell you what's going on. As far as body fat testing, DEXA scan, or somebody with calipers. You want to go to the same person with calipers that does it the same every single time. But really, the DEXA is the only really way to get or getting dunked. Those are really the only two ways. The nice thing about the DEXA is they can tell you how much visceral fat you have versus organ fat. They can tell you bone density, all that good stuff. I just had a lady got a DEXA scan here last week. Working with her a little while, and she's doing really, really well. She's reduced body fat and gained some muscle mass. So I recommend a DEXA scan every once in a while, just to kind of get an idea of where you're at. A lot of people use those scales where it gives you a reading based on your feet or your hands. I generally find that's based on a lot of the water. Like, so you could really be holding a lot of water because you're under a lot of stress. That could throw your reading off. As you get leaner, those things get less and less accurate. So I wouldn't put much weight on those, the ones that basically you're standing on or you do the hand grip thing and it gives you a body fat measurement. I wouldn't, particularly if you're leaner, I wouldn't put much in there. What easy beginner exercises on the rebounder can help reduce my body fat and increase muscle? Well, the rebounder will increase muscle. As far as reducing body fat, exercise is probably the worst way to reduce body fat. One, because when you create, and it is good to build muscle, and fitness is good for your overall health and well-being, but doing specific exercises to try and burn body fat, most people cannot train at that level to do that. And all that happens is you increase activity and your appetite goes up and you end up just eating more food, or your body ends up down regulating other things like digestion, immune function. Your body has this like fixed amount of calories that it runs on every day. And as you increase your activity, it will either slow down, it'll make you less motivated to do other things, or it will just increase your hunger. So using exercise to reduce body fat is really not a good long-term solution. Lifting weights with the purpose of maintaining muscle mass. Yes, the rebounder will help you keep muscle in your legs. Will it build some muscle? Sure, but you'll adapt to it pretty quickly. You can march on the rebounder and things like that to start. And then here's the caveat in the same question. Is there an exercise that can help strengthen or relieve tightness in the long muscle of my left leg, which runs approximately from the outside of the knee down the leg almost to the ankle? So with that being said, if you've got IT band tightness and tightness down through your shin on the side, the rebounder is probably not going to be my number one choice for you to start. A lot of that is I'd have to look at the way you move and what you're doing, but a lot of that comes down to hip issues. I'd need to know if it's on the right or the left side. That makes a big difference. But most of the IT band issues come down to like pelvic position and hip function. So getting down on the floor and quadruped, doing knee circles, knee hugs, things like dynamic active bird dogs, where you're going out and you're reaching across your body. But that's going to be specific according to what issue you have going on. But generally, pelvic position, hip function is going to basically, sitting in a deep squat could help with that. Narrow stance, holding onto something in a deep squat could help get that pelvis in a little better position and take some stress off of that. You have great difficulty going up and down the stairs, so being able to walk after sitting. So yeah, I would get up and move around. I'd do standing cross connects where you're crossing, connect your body, things like that. Move around, sit in a deep squat. Try not to sit for long periods of time. But I'd have to see you move before I could give any specific advice, because it's just, I can't give specific advice without seeing you. But generally, I would start with floor stuff with that and get your pelvis, some more variability in your pelvic position, get you to be able to shift from hip to hip. A lot of people lose the ability to shift from hip to hip, and that basically causes things down the chain. The thing you got to understand about the human body, when something is tight, that's usually something else isn't doing what it's supposed to do, and that strategy is trying to make up for something else. And a lot of times it's a strategy that you're stuck in. You're stuck in a certain strategy that's causing that tightness. The brain controls all of that. People that are like, I got to stretch. Great. If you enjoy it, wonderful. But if you knock someone unconscious, they go into a wet, limp noodle and they collapse on the floor, and you can bend them into a pretzel. The brain controls all of that. So the brain has a very good reason for doing that. That being said, if you're experiencing the fact that you have a hard time going up and down the stairs, after you sit for long periods of time, I would reduce the time that you sit. And then I would start with things like step ups and things like that off a really small box, and really get that hip and glute working. And strengthen that motion and that position so that you can, use those legs, because the rebounder, it requires a lot of ability to absorb force through the chain. And that, if you've been doing a lot of rebounding, that might be one of the reasons why you're having that issue, because it is a very unstable surface and it does place a lot of demand. And if you can't maintain and manage your pelvis well, it could cause a lot of issues for you. So that's that. So to recap, it's highly individual, but most men are generally going to do well between 8 and 15%. Most women are going to do well between 15 and 22%. and it's highly individual. It's going to depend on how you want to live your life. Um, and you have to understand that the expectations of physique that are portrayed on Instagram, on the social media, are not realistic for most people. That doesn't mean you just let yourself go, sit on the couch and eat Oreos. But that does mean that you got to understand that most of these people that are on Instagram are either using something to help prop their hormones up, or they're using Photoshop, or they're only that lean for certain periods of time. Um, there are people that are ultra lean and have, good health markers and feel good there, and that's totally fine. You have to find where you work and operate best. You can do that through lab work on how you're feeling. Also, the social part of it, like, you want to be able to go out with your friends and have. So I like the 80-20, 80% of the time, it's really good stuff. And even, like, you can go out and have what's considered junk food, um, you know, that is still pretty damn healthy. Like, I can get a double burger with no bun, and I can get French fries cooked in duck fat. Um, yeah, I would say it would be a little, yeah, that would 15 to 24. Most 70-year-olds I would expect to be above 20. From what I've seen, I would see 20 to 25% would be totally good. And honestly, you want to have a little extra body fat as you age, just for emergencies. The body tends to operate better there. The amount of work, as somebody who's 70 years old, I would just do some really full body workouts a couple times a week. Maybe get on an Aerodyne bike. I really love the Aerodyne because you're pedaling and you're reaching. Get on the Aerodyne for 10 seconds on, a minute rest, 10 seconds on, a minute rest. You do that for 6 to 8 rounds. You maybe do that twice a week, and the rest of the time you walk. And that's going to provide, two full body strength training sessions that involve big compound movements. Just like, you're in the Optimal Wellness membership, so you have access to my beginner strength training circuit. So if you did something like that combined with a little bit of Aerodyne or a rower or some med ball slams for conditioning, you want to get your heart rate up a little bit, just to stretch out the blood vessels and arteries and things like that. People kind of take it a little too far, in my opinion, but you're on the right track. You're doing good. You look great. So that's basically what I would do. And then, make sure you're eating, for somebody in their 70s, a palm full of protein, two palmfuls of vegetables for a female, maybe a handful of starch every once in a while. That would be kind of my deal. And then find things that you like to do, getting outside, gardening, things like that. People that generally live a long time don't tend to be performance beasts. I've said this many times. If you want to live a long time, you want to flirt with performance, you don't want to marry it. So, I've had plenty of clients 70 plus. I even had a guy who lived in his 90s who I worked with. And if you're consistent with it, I think the best thing you can do as a 70-year-old is get down on the floor, lay down, roll to one side, get up, get back down on the floor, lay down, roll to the other side, and get up. I think that's one of the best things you can do every day. And at 70, it's really important to just keep moving constantly. You want to be moving all the time. Motion is lotion, as long as it's not excessive. So that's a great question and a good observation. So I'm happy to take any more questions. Let me check Instagram and see if there's any questions. I don't see any over there. But yeah, that's about it. So happy to take any questions. Anybody has any. I'm going to be launching a men's coaching program here. I'm actually launched it now. So if you have any questions about that, if you're interested in getting into that, basically it's a group coaching program that you get a 90-minute consult with me in the beginning. It doesn't matter if you're super fit or if you're really fit. We'll be able to, the 90-minute consult will be able to get you a game plan, and then I'll be able to provide you support via WhatsApp, and then also via group coaching calls. Be happy to talk to you about that. If you go to vitalitybrotherhood.com and you look at the coaching thing at the top, there's a link to book a call with me, and we can talk about, it's a 4-month program. It starts in January. If you sign up this week, I'll give you a couple extra one-on-one sessions with me. I'm also going to be launching a women's group here soon by popular demand. I launched my men's group, and then I got a bunch of emails requesting a women's group. because traditionally that tends to be hard charging women is what I tend to generally attract over my career. I've worked with a ton of guys as well, but I tend to attract the super hard charging woman who's very frustrated because she's working very hard and she's not getting the results that she wants. So that'll be launched here soon. Um, so of course, if you want to contact me, just feel free to message me on Instagram. I'd be happy to chat with you about any of that stuff that I have going on. So thanks a lot for tuning in today. I really appreciate you being here, and have yourself a great day. Make sure you take the time to get outside. And overall, if you want to look good and feel good, you want to live a long time, it's lift 2 to 3 days a week. And that's not circuit training, that's lifting. Challenge yourself in a manageable way. That's where the nuance comes in, because you want to build a foundation so you can handle training. A lot of people just jump right into training. You've got to build a foundation to build training on. Like, the bigger the base of the pyramid, better your training is going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. And then walk every day, the 10 minutes, 3 times a day, I think is amazing. And then do something cardiovascularly to challenge yourself a couple times a week. Eat real food, um, you know, steak, fish, chicken, vegetables, moderate starch, more, try and keep your starch mainly after your workouts. I encourage people to eat seasonally. If you're living in northern latitudes, that's the time to go on a lower carbish diet. Um, and then people that are living in areas like I live that are the tropics, you can get away with a little more carbohydrates. But the protein is the most important thing. And that's basically the formula. And a lot of it is in the application, and a lot of it is a consistency. And most people, one, they either do too much too soon, or they get started and then they don't progress as they should because they haven't built the foundation they need, and then they end up getting hurt or injured. I see so many people, they go to the gym for their first session and the trainer just wrecks them and they can't walk for 2 weeks. That's not the way you want to start. You want to start off nice and easy. It's amazing when you're a beginner, or if you've taken a long break, how little it takes to get yourself going in the right direction. So take the time, build that foundation, and then get your circadian rhythm in order. That's the thing too. Your circadian rhythm is going to make everything so much easier and make your body operate more efficiently. So take care. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you again soon.